Yes? Okay, good. Good morning. Well, I'm Tami Overhauser. I'm a member here at Renovate, and I'm part of the teaching team with Pastor Dave and Donnie Mabe, I think, are both out of town, so I'm the captain now. No, just kidding. But I'm super honored to be sharing with you Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, moms. You know, here's a saying, God could not be everywhere, so he made moms. I think that's true. Although we know that's not true. God is omnipresent, so don't text me later telling me my theology's off. But, you know, I know moms, you're like me, we're out here getting it done, and so happy Mother's Day. Hope you feel blessed and honored and loved by your family this morning. My kids are here, all four of them, and couldn't do it without you. Thanks. Thanks for that. This is a picture of my mom here. She is there in the blue hoodie. My family, my brother, my sister-in-law, my dad. My mom is the nicest, sweetest, kindest person on the entire planet. In fact, my family has discussed, and we actually think she might not even be human. Perhaps she's just an angel, like a literal angel that God put on the planet to love us well and to teach us how to love people well. So she's going to listen to this. She can't be here, but when she listens to it, Mom, just know that we love you. There's no one that compares to you, and thanks for setting the bar so high, really. No, but she is the best. We are in week 3 of our series entitled Living Life Backwards. And we've been examining the life of King Solomon, who wrote, among other things, the book of Ecclesiastes. He also wrote the Song of Solomon, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. King Solomon wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, and the word Ecclesiastes means to call to assembly. And so he's kind of saying, gather around, everybody. I have something important to tell you. King Solomon was considered the wisest man alive, and here he is at the end of his life, reflecting on all that he did, all that he obtained, and all that he experienced. And thankfully, he wrote it all down for you and me. And he's sharing it with us in the book of Ecclesiastes as sort of hindsight. Here's what I did, and here's what I learned. We like to say in our house, what we learned. So this is King Solomon saying what we learned. As a mom, I appreciate a bit of hindsight from someone a bit older, maybe who's gone before me, and can maybe speak to some of the things that I'm about to go through. For instance, both my daughters are here. They both have June birthdays. They're about to turn 20 and 18. And so I could probably speak to some things that a younger mom might be going through, right? And tell you the things that are important are not whether they took their 12:30 nap or ate their blueberries or shared their toys. Sharing toys is just not even a thing when you're an adult. If I have a brand new car and Karen comes up and is like, share, I'll be like, no, that's not a thing. It's a thing when you're a toddler. Let me just tell you, it's not a thing when you're an adult. No, go get your own. Mine, that's what I would say. Proper response. But what does matter, my hindsight for you, is how you point them to Jesus. How you teach them to love God and how you teach them to love others well. So there's free hindsight for you. Happy Mother's Day. But how do I know these things? I know these things because I gave them too much attention, more attention than they deserved back in the day. And my hindsight comes from sort of reflective distance, much like King Solomon. So we can sort of read the book of Ecclesiastes through this lens of wow, what hindsight? Let me hear what you have to say because you've gone before me. Wisest man in the world. It begs attention. He went before us and he wants to help us not make the same mistakes that he did. So today our big picture is going to be how to live a life of purpose by heeding some wise advice, not only from the life of King Solomon, but we're also going to look at the life of Queen Esther. So we love a good queen on Mother's Day, right? Living a life of purpose isn't exactly a thing you think about early in life. When you're young, maybe we feel invincible, like we have all the time in the world. I think about my own life and growing up when I was younger. I have an older brother. Y'all saw him there in the picture. Uncle Jeff. Everyone needs an Uncle Jeff. We gave my poor, sweet mom such a run for her money. So crazy. We were a bit reckless with our lives when we were growing up. Most of it was like dumb teenage rebellion. A lot of it was us being risk takers. We loved to snow ski and water ski. And it seemed like we were always in peril or pushing the limits of our physical bodies and always breaking a bone. Someone always broke a bone. I always broke my ribs. My mom was like, could you stop breaking your ribs? I think the last time I water skied was, 4 or 5 years ago? Broke my ribs. It's probably the last time I'll water ski. I've thought about it, like, will I water ski again? Probably not. Probably not. Anyway, this was our life growing up. We were always in danger, always in trouble, always in peril. And there were fist fights, mostly my brother, the fist fights, fender benders and bad choices. My poor mom was just trying to keep us alive and out of jail, frankly. Happy Mother's Day. But one very serious, unfortunate time, my brother and I were 15, 16, we were in a very serious bus accident on the way home from a chartered ski trip, and the bus driver fell asleep, and the bus went off the road and rolled, flipped a couple times into a ditch in Utah in the snow at 2 a.m. And an accident that should have, by all intents and purposes, it should have taken our lives. It should have taken our lives. But we walked away with broken ribs, a few broken bones, and bruises. My brother literally had scratches and one bruise like this. My brother and I get to talking about reflecting on life a lot, and our conversations start like, dude, remember that one time? And then they always end, they take a serious turn, and we say, how are we alive? Like, why are we alive? Why are we even here? That is so crazy. All the things, peril we put ourselves in, situations we put ourselves in, and, unfortunate accidents. Why are we even here? And the conclusion that I came to is this: God has a plan for my life and a purpose for me being here. And I wanted to know what it was. Get in on it and not waste another moment of time. I have not survived all that I have survived, right? To just go through the motions, or worst, waste one precious moment of the life I've been given and not know why I'm here. Dave mentioned last week or the week before that the average lifespan was 78. I was like, no. I need like 95, maybe 100 to do the things that I now have learned that God has put before me. I'm going to go the distance and finish this thing strong. But I believe that we're all created with a divine destiny and a calling and a purpose. King Solomon states in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 11, God has placed eternity in the hearts of man. And one commentary I read puts it this way, I'll read it to you, meaning that we can never really be completely satisfied with earthly pleasures and pursuits. Because we are created in his image, we have a spiritual thirst. We have eternal value, and nothing but the eternal God can truly satisfy us. He's built in us a restless yearning that can only be satisfied by him. That's why deep down inside, we're never really satisfied with the status quo. I'm not. Anyway, I don't know about you, but there's a restless yearning inside of me. I know that I'm here to make an impact in the lives of those around me, to make a dent in darkness, so to speak. And I'm humbled and thankful and very sober-minded about it on a daily basis. I think the same is true for you, that God has a plan and a purpose for your life. God has these words to say to us through the prophet Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, verse 11. He says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." I know. Now, I can be very overzealous about the Lord and pretty dramatic and woo, we are out here living for Christ. And my family is like, calm down, Mom, we just need to eat dinner and drive carpool, please. And you might be thinking, so glad you had this near-death experience and you're super, on fire and, born again and a new zeal for life. But we are out here trying to survive and pay the mortgage and drive carpool and make dinner. And there's really not any time for this. Let's think about why we're here. That's a lot to shove on someone's plate on the daily. But friends, I get you. I totally understand that no margin for extra zealous, overdramatic things. My life is very mundane. I like to refer to it as miraculously mundane. That makes me feel better about breakfast, carpool, dishes, laundry, carpool, dinner, dishes, laundry, carpool, homework, laundry. On repeat, on the daily, from the day Becca was born to the day David graduates from high school is 25 years. Well, I don't have a lot of margin either. Like Pastor Dave said the other week, I loved it. He said, we're all in a rat race, man, on a hamster wheel. That's how it feels. Do you like that, man? I was channeling my inner Dave James. Come on, man. We're on a hamster wheel. And we all feel it. King Solomon felt it. I think that's why he wrote the book of Ecclesiastes for us. It's written in a very skeptical, pessimistic voice, and he says things like this. I love it because it's like reading King David's Psalms. His heart is lamenting, and it's real. It's real. You go, yes, I feel that way too. Thank you for writing that down so I don't feel crazy in my over-dramatic feelings about the daily grind. He says this, King Solomon, in the very first chapter, in the very first verse of Ecclesiastes, he said, this is how it opens, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What are we even doing? And he goes on to say in chapter 2, thus I considered all my activities which my hand had done and the labor which I had exerted, and behold, all was vanity and striving after wind. And there was no profit under the sun. No profit under the sun. I'm wow, talk about dramatic. That's so dramatic. And he carries on like this for 11 chapters or so. He's searching for meaning in work, in riches, in pleasure, in knowledge. And his answer was this. He came up empty. It's vanity and chasing the wind. Have you ever tried to chase the wind? Solomon's conclusion at the very end of chapter 12, he has this gem of wisdom for us, and I love it. I love the book of Ecclesiastes. I always have. He says this in chapter 12, verse 13. The conclusion, when all has been heard, is fear God and keep his commandments, because this applies to everyone. That's it, y'all. Fear God and keep his commandments. We can close up shop and go to brunch and just dwell on that, because that's from the wisest man in the world. That is his conclusion at the end of his life. He did not find meaning in work. He did not find purpose in riches or pleasure or knowledge, but in fearing God and keeping his commandments. To fear God, if you think about it, means to respect him or have reverence for him, esteem him, even love him. Can be broken down into all these terms. And we've also learned in the New Testament that the greatest commandment in Jesus' eyes was not so much the 10 commandments as we think of them in the Old Testament. Because then I'm like, oh man, I'm out here busy, and you're saying the way to improve my life is to go, one, read the 10 Commandments, memorize them, study them, and then obey them. This does not feel liberating at all. It's not going to change my life. I mean, depending on where you are, it might. It might change your life. Wouldn't hurt. But Jesus said the 2 greatest commandments are these: love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. In the New Testament, those 2 commandments, you can take the 10 commandments and fit them right up under this umbrella of grace. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So let's start here. You want to find purpose and meaning and plans for your life? Start by loving God and loving others. That's where you'll find meaning. That's where you're going to find God's plan for you. That's where you'll find your purpose. Because without God as our foundation, all that we are living for is meaningless and empty. It really is. Early on in Solomon's life, he failed to heed his own advice, and he began a downward spiral. Near the end of his life, he looked back with his hindsight with an attitude of humility and repentance. And he took stock of his life, hoping to spare his readers, us, the bitterness of learning through personal experience. That everything apart from God is empty, hollow, and meaningless. And that should be a game changer for you and me right there. Because otherwise, what are we even doing? We're chasing after the wind, really. What does it look like for you and I to fear God and keep his commandments, to love God and love others, to find our purpose, to have God as our foundation, and to have God as the foundation of our lives, and to live for him with eternity in mind? It should be exciting and empowering, sobering and weighty maybe, or like an urgency. Like, yes, I've got to live this life for him and find out what I'm called to do. Sometimes I get asked, I go to a lot of functions with Chad for his work, and, it's like mortgage workers and their spouses, and so you're just there as like spouse. You're like +1. I'm +1 all the time. And I get asked a lot, what do you do? So what do you do? Since you're not in the mortgage business, it's like polite conversation. So what do you do? And depending on my audience, there's like a long version and a short version. And what's really behind your question? Like, how much time do we have? So I usually say I'm a stay-at-home mom. And now I have grown children and teenagers. So not really the title, but I will say I'm a stay-at-home mom. But when I look at that title with eternity in mind, I want to say, yep, I'm a stay-at-home mom. And then you can figure out what you can label however you want to label, and you can, churn in your mind what you think I do on a daily basis. But what I do on a daily basis, to keep it from feeling mundane, to keep it from feeling like it's futility and striving after the wind, because laundry, dishes, carpool can, that's not very glamorous. But with eternity in mind, I am waking up before my children, and I'm opening this Bible, and I'm praying it over them. I'm saying these things out loud before the Lord, and ushering the Holy Spirit into my house, into my kitchen, into the hallways before anybody awakes. I am calling down heaven on behalf of my children, and I'm beating off the devil. I'm opening the front door and saying, you're not welcome here, devil. You can get out. I'm chasing him away from the door of their room before they even wake up. And when they leave, I pray for them. I pray for their exams. I pray for their social life. I pray for their spiritual well-being. I'm in here raising world changers. I'm shaping hearts. You want to hear this at a mortgage cocktail party? Probably not. They're like, okay, just trying to make conversation. And when they're gone, I intercede for them while I fold laundry and make beds. And when they come home, In the spirit, I wipe them clean from the day. I call it delousing. The delousing from the public school. I take it all off. I wipe them clean in the spirit, if you will, and fill them back up. I do the same for my husband. This is how I live with eternity in mind. This is how I find my purpose. Oh, I'm a stay-at-home mom. Absolutely. Like wink, wink. Yep, just in here. Nothing to see here. Just folding laundry, making grilled cheese, changing the world. Changing the world. This is what I'm called to do. This is my purpose. This is how I love God and love others. And when they go to bed, I sit up and I think about what I want to say to y'all. And I think about, ask Chatham, out of the blue, I'll go, I think I'll say blah, blah, blah. He's like, because it's turning in my head all day long. I think about what I want to write to encourage people to run fast after Christ, to grab hold of what God has for them and not let go until he calls them home. My husband, mortgage banker, stay-at-home mom. Don't we sound mundane and boring? This man told me a long time ago, I don't even know if we were married yet, he said, I'm going to build churches. I was like, awesome, me too. And he was like, I'm going to make money. I feel like God has called me to make money and physically, financially build churches. I want to fund the kingdom. It's like, awesome, let's do that. And that's what he does. But that's what he has, eternity in mind. I'm going to build a church. I'm going to leave a spiritual legacy. We're like the Incredibles up in here, like nothing to see. And then we're like, whoa, bam, we're coming at you. I mean, that's what it's like. Don't you want to do that versus just like get in your little car and drive to your little job and sit at your little computer and then come home and get in your little bed? I find it much more exciting to like plug in and be like amplified for the Lord. I don't even know where I am in my notes, but that's okay. And then you're like, what do you do? And what do you do for a living? Oh, that's nice. Does my life please him? Do I have holy reverence for God? I fear him in the sense that this is what he's called me to do, and I am fearful in a holy, respectful way if I don't listen to him and obey. When God is at the core of it all and you involve him, I think it all begins to make sense. I'm reminded that my life is fleeting, fragile, and tomorrow's not promised. So I'm going to make the most of it. The Apostle Paul has this to say in the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 15. Be careful then how you live, not as the unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. If you don't know, if you're like, I don't know, I kind of don't know what you mean, I kind of don't know what I'm called to do. I have this, again, I'm super overzealous, but that's okay. I have this sign here. It says, here I am, send me. I bought it at a flea market time. And it sits in my office. And I'm not over-exaggerating when I say every day I look at it and ask God this. Thankfully, he hasn't sent me out of America. I'm not planning to go. Lots of work to do right here in the good old USA. But this to me reminds me I'm here for a purpose. And every day I say, what is it that you have for me? Do I need to go see my neighbor? Do I need to, which child needs just a little more TLC? Who do I need to call? What can I do for you, Lord? Because here I am, I'm your servant. Use me. So maybe ask him that. Maybe ask him in your quiet time, what am I called here to do? And if you don't know, start with fear God and keep his commandments, because that'll always help you out. Did we fear God and keep his commandments? You know, my son David, I guess he's in the other room, but The other day we were having a little light discussion about where you go when you die, and do angels have free will? These are the questions he's asking me at lunch. I'm like, dude, I don't even know. I don't know if angels have free will. He's like, well, Satan got kicked out of heaven, so apparently they have free will. I'm like, you know what? Whenever someone asks me a question, I don't have the answer, I say, that is a good question, and I will find out and get back to you. But that's what I had to say to my 12-year-old. But what I'm focused on, kind of turn the conversation to this. Did we fear God and keep his commandments? Did you do the things at the end? I don't know a lot about heaven, I don't know. But what I do know, did I do the things he created me to do? The things he saved me for? And are we living with purpose to God's glory? Did it impact those around me? Did it change lives? Did it save lives? And we'll worry about angels later. Maybe we'll ask Grandma Linda, maybe she knows. Did you love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength? Because, listen, y'all, God has a plan for you. He has a plan for the stay-at-home mom, for the realtor, for the teacher, for the small business owner, for the faithful employee, white collar, blue collar, students, coaches. Wherever you are, you go rock that job at Sonic. You be the best Sonic employee they ever had. Go out on a limb. Witness to your coworker. Invite them to church. Take a missions trip, if God calls you. Start a Bible study. Stand up for a cause that God has put on your heart. Has God been speaking something to you? Are you like, I think maybe I should? Yes, you should. And please do. I know I'm supposed to get up and do that thing you know you're supposed to do for him, that he's calling you to do. In one of my favorite passages of Scripture, during his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus instructs us in Matthew. It's recorded in Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. God did not spare my life over and over and over again so I could fold laundry and watch The Bachelorette from my comfy couch. And let's have some proper perspective, honestly, because Solomon said everything apart from God is empty, not everything except God. It's just apart from him. We're allowed to and expected to and created to enjoy ourselves. Just those things are not the end-all be-all. God is the end-all be-all. Because hit me up later and we'll talk about The Bachelorette that is on tomorrow, because I don't think she's going to be good. I'm worried about Hannah B. I like to enjoy myself. It's just that's not what life is solely about. And apart from God, those things make no sense. It's chasing after the wind. It really is. I want to live this one big, beautiful life full of purpose and give God glory. I told you we'd look at a wisdom of a queen today too, so real quick, we're going to look the short version of the story of Queen Esther. If you've never read it, it's recorded in the book of Esther, and I encourage you to go read it. There's only 2 books in the Bible dedicated to women, starring women, if you will, about women, the book of Esther and the book of Ruth. And so, again, when something is sort of an anomaly, it begs our attention. So we're going to look at the book of Esther real quick this morning. Esther maybe did not have all the experience and wisdom that King Solomon did, but she understood this concept. That there was a God-given purpose to her life, and she acted on it. So the story of Queen Esther, in the book of Esther, and begins with the king of Persia throwing a month-long banquet. And the men had one banquet, and the women had another one. And the king of Persia, he calls for his wife. Her name was Vashti, and he calls for Vashti, and he wants her to come and sort of come and let me show you off like a trophy wife. And she refuses. Don't you hate that, men? Call your wife. She does not come on demand. So he summons his wife. She refuses to come. And because of this, he banishes her. and he sets out to find a new queen. And he holds like beauty pageants type auditions. And Esther is a Jewish girl, and she's being raised by her cousin. And her cousin thinks, what a way to kind of, this is what I think he thinks, give her a better life and enter her into this contest, sort of, to pick a new queen. I feel like American Idol meets America's Top Model, something like that. And so month-long preparation for this choosing. And Esther joins the contest, I guess, and lo and behold, she's picked, and she becomes one of the king's wives, and soon the most favored and loved queen. During Queen Esther's reign, through a sordid twist of events, the king signs a decree that all the Jewish people are going to be killed. But unbeknownst to him, he doesn't know his new queen is also Jewish. And her cousin, his name is Mordecai. Mordecai pleads with her to do something about this, or all the Jewish people are going to perish, and don't think you'll be spared. You might, but you might not, because you're Jewish too. And so she says, look, I can't just go before the king. You can't go before the king. It makes him mad, and you have to be chosen, right? He has to summon you, like we saw with his first wife, and you can't just go before him. Because kings back in the day like to chop your head off. So she would get her head chopped off, like we've seen others do. Mordecai replies to her, if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance are going to arise for the Jews from somewhere else, and you and your father's house will surely perish. Like, look, someone surely is going to rise up and help the Jews. You might perish in the meantime. So you should probably step up and say something. He goes on to say, and who knows, Esther, whether you have not come into the kingdom for such a time as this. He's saying, look, this is it. This is your big moment. This is why you were put here, to save the day. This is why you are the queen. This is why you are the queen right now. This is why you're Jewish. This is why you're here. This is why you were put in this place and this time. It's very, very providential. It's her providential purpose. We see our queen muster up an impressive amount of bravery. And she has this to say. She says, okay, assemble all the Jewish people in the town, pray and fast for me, and I will go before the king. Which, she says, is not according to the law. She says, if I perish, I perish. A lot is at stake. A lot is at stake, but I'm going down swinging. If I perish, I perish. Here I go. She knew it's what she was called to do. She could just be the queen. She could just be the queen, eat grapes, lay there and get fanned and be the queen and say, and take her risk. She might not perish. She could probably still hide out in the palace. She knew this was what she was called to do. She goes before the king. She finds favor. The decree was reversed, and an entire nation was saved. Friends, perhaps you've come into God's kingdom for such a time as this. This family, this job, this time in history. Perhaps you were born when you were born, and you live where you live, and you're at the job that you're at for a greater purpose than meets the eye. You can be a teacher, or you can be like a crazy, stealthy ninja Christian teacher. You can be an undercover ambassador for Christ, or you can be a small business owner, or you can be both. She could have just been a queen, or she could be the queen who saved an entire nation. It's providential that you're here this morning, that you live in Austin, that you're 36 years old. It's not all just striving after the wind. It's God's providential plan and purpose for your life. to do all that he's called us to do, to make an impact, to make that dent in darkness, to change lives, to save lives, and do what God's called you to do. Live our lives full of purpose. Amen. I'm going to pray and we're going to worship a little bit more. Let me pray for you this morning. God, thank you for the people in this room. It's not just fate or coincidence. They're here this morning. That we live here in Austin in 2019. I believe it's by your providential hand. Lord, I pray that we would enjoy the life you've given us and live this life that you've given us with you as our foundation. Everything apart from you makes no sense. But with you, it all comes together and makes perfect sense. God, I pray that we would go where you say to go, that we would do what you've called us to do. I know that you've put eternity inside all of us. And it cries out back to you. I pray that we would respond to the eternity that you've put in us, God. To your plans and your purposes, to that restless yearning inside of us. The Bible describes it as deep calling deep. And I pray this morning as deep calls to deep, Lord, you would light a fire in the hearts of the people in this room to find their purpose, to find their plan, to be on fire for you and live their life with eternity in mind. In Jesus' name.